Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
This is the Bloomberg Daybreak Europe podcast. Good morning. It's Friday the 27th of February. I'm Caroline Hepker in London.
And I'm Stephen Carroll in Brussels. Coming up today, Netflix walks away from its bid for Warner Brothers, clearing the way for Paramount's $111 billion offer.
The Green Party wins a UK parliamentary seat in a Labour stronghold, underscoring the threat to Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Plus, deep inside Russia's war machine, economic pain is starting to show.
Let's start with a roundup of our top stories.
Netflix has dropped out of the fight to buy Warner Brothers Discovery, clearing the way for rival bidder Paramount to clinch a $111 billion deal. The streaming giant says while its offer would have passed muster with regulators and created shareholder value, it didn't want to keep bidding. Bloomberg's Lucas Shaw says ultimately it came down to money.
The Warner Brothers board is not really concerned about synergies. I think that if they could have chosen between the two buyers, they preferred Netflix. Netflix is a bigger, stronger, healthier company. But Paramount ultimately offered more money.
Shaw added that the takeover fight has been contentious with both in Hollywood and in Washington. After apparently losing the fight, Paramount launched a multi-pronged campaign offering more money and lobbying US President Donald Trump about the deal.
Here in the UK, the Green Party has taken a Labour safe seat in a special election, raising existential questions for Keir Starmer's government. Hannah Spencer secured 40.7% of the vote in the Gorton and Denton constituency, with Labour coming in third with 25% and Reform UK second on 28%. Spencer says the Greens have defeated the parties backed by billionaire donors.
Things have changed a lot over the last few decades because working hard used to get you something. It got you a house, a nice life, holidays. It got you somewhere. But now, working hard, what does that get you?
Spencer's win is the first time the Green Party has ever won a UK by-election. The scale of the victory allows the Greens to frame themselves as an electable left-wing alternative to the Labour government. That is likely to set off alarm bells inside Downing Street, where Labour MPs have already questioned Prime Minister Keir Starmer's political strategy and future.
Anthropic has rejected the Pentagon's latest offer amidst a dispute over the use of its technology by the US military. The move escalates an existing standoff just one day before a government deadline for the company to drop its restrictions or face severe consequences. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei says the firm cannot in good conscience accept the request in a statement released yesterday. Arshie Siddiqui, a Democratic strategist and CEO of Bellwether Government Affairs, says the situation is unprecedented.
We're in uncharted waters. This technology is still developing, and had Anthropic not taken the stance, it would have been a race to the bottom, because this isn't just about Anthropic, this is about other companies as well, where they might be then forced to this race to the bottom, where everybody is trying to get this DoD work and not having any sort of guardrail. So from my perspective, I think Democrats are going to see this as true leadership.
CEO of Bellwether Government Affairs, Arshie Siddiqui. Anthropic is insisting on two conditions for military use of its Claude AI tools. It doesn't want its technology used to surveil US citizens or for autonomous lethal strikes without a human in the loop. The US Defense Department says it will declare Anthropic a supply chain risk if the company fails to drop its conditions. It could also use the Defense Production Act to utilize its software even if the company objects.
US and Iranian forces have agreed to restart nuclear talks as soon as next week, after the latest round of discussions ended yesterday. With just days to go before US President Donald Trump's deadline to reach an agreement, Bloomberg understands the Americans have been disappointed with progress so far. However, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told state television the meetings showed good progress. The US and Iran have faced deadlock over nuclear activity, with the US building military forces in the region and Iran refusing to allow its highly enriched uranium to be moved out of the country.
Hillary Clinton has denied any association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein under questioning from congressional investigators. The former US Secretary of State and presidential candidate spoke to reporters after giving an hours-long deposition.
I did not know Jeffrey Epstein. I never went to his island. I never went to his homes. I never went to his offices. So it's on the record numerous times.
Hillary Clinton also maintained that her husband, former President Bill Clinton, knew nothing about Epstein's crimes and described his associate Ghislaine Maxwell as a casual acquaintance. House Democrats are demanding that US President Donald Trump also testifies to congressional investigators on ties to Epstein. President Trump and both Clintons have denied any knowledge of Epstein's criminal activities.
Shares in CoreWeave fell as much as 13% in late trading after it reported a bigger than expected loss and increased capital expenditure that alarmed investors. The AI data center operator reported its losses had widened to 89 cents per share in the fourth quarter, more than analysts expected. CoreWeave has been raising billions to plough into new infrastructure. But some investors are starting to look cautiously at the amount of capital spending in the AI space. Those are some of our top stories for you this morning. In terms of the markets, as we get to the end of February, it looks like Asian equities and European equities will outperform the US. MSCI Asia Pacific Index up more than 7% this month. In Europe, 3.6% higher. This morning, MSCI Asia Pacific continues to gain. The All-Country World Index is up 0.1%. US stock futures, though, are in the red for the Nasdaq and the S&P 500. 10-year Treasury yields at 4% this morning. Looking elsewhere to the oil markets, Brent crude futures at $71.11, up 0.5%. The dollar weakening 1/10 on the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index. Stephen?
Well, in a moment, we'll bring you the latest on the Warner Brothers deal, the UK by-election results and new documents seen by Bloomberg which reveal the state of part of Russia's war economy. But another story that we've been reading this morning, are we entering the trillionaire era? Ben Steverman's been writing about the rising wealth of the super rich for Bloomberg Weekend. He points out that in 2017, nobody was worth more than $100 billion. Now there are 18 people who are. And a successful SpaceX public offering could make Elon Musk, whose fortune now tops $670 billion, the world's first trillionaire. Ben writes this soaring wealth is reminiscent of another area, the turn of the 20th century, when the first billionaire emerged, who was John D. Rockefeller. And the comparison of public perceptions of the super rich are very interesting. If we think about then and now, he dove into the Rockefeller archives for this story as well and looked at how the family really were perceived by the public, the fears that they had about taxation and some of the conversations between father and son about, what was going to happen in society and what it meant for their wealth as well. I mean, there are parallels to be driven to what's happening right now.
Yeah, I think this piece was so thought-provoking to me because he looks at those letters between father and son. He discusses the drive to tax and break up Rockefeller's Standard Oil, how the priorities of the Rockefellers suffused American society. And he talks about how when you're talking about such extreme and unimaginable wealth in the hands of one person, their patience, their conscientiousness, their creativity is enormously important. And I'd sort of add to that even that if you think about the parallels to today, the outsized impact that these kind of mega wealthy have. The past was about the influence on just US society, but maybe you could say today it's about the influence of these, super, super wealthy on the whole world. So it's such a new era.
Yeah, I mean, Ben's conclusion is that, it's not the fact that someone's becoming super rich, it's that who becomes super rich is what's important now because of the influence that they have, global as it can be. And the more patient, conscientious and creative the super wealthy are, the more effective that they can be. So something to think about, perhaps. It's a great read. We'll put a link to it in our podcast show notes. Well, let's bring you more on the big deals news of the morning. Netflix dropping its bid to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. That clears the way for Paramount Skydance to buy the studio. Manuel Baigori, who leads our deals team in Asia, joins us now for more. Manuel, why did Netflix pull out?
Well, the deal became just too expensive for them, right? Paramount kept coming back with superior or sweetened offers, so to speak. And despite Netflix having an agreement with Warner Brothers since December, Warner Brothers, just realized that the latest offer from Paramount at $31 a share was just superior to that offer by Netflix. And, at the same time, Netflix had a few days to potentially come back with a sweetened offer, but they just realized that it was becoming too expensive, and a potential new offer from them could have potentially jeopardized their own financials. So they decided to remain disciplined and just walk away.
So what happens next then with Paramount's offer? Is it likely then to clear regulatory hurdles?
Yes, it's a very good point. Everybody is going to be watching very, very closely. This is a very big transformative deal in the entertainment industry, affecting not just the US, but globally. And regulators definitely will take a very close look at how, this affects the industry and ultimately consumers. So we'll likely hear a lot of voices from different people in the industry, politicians and so on, kind of like weighing and giving their views on the implications of this deal. So for these transformative deals, usually the regulatory approvals tend to be lengthy at times and also controversial at times. Obviously, we'll see what happens with this one in particular, but I would expect more of a bumpy road than a smooth path ahead.
How important was the politics in this deal, Manuel? Paramount CEO David Ellison's father, Larry Ellison, is a Trump ally.
Yes, very good point. And we've seen different permutations of the deal structure and the backers over the past 3, 4, 5 months since this thing kicked off by Paramount, one should say. So they ultimately got to where they wanted, even if it was a tough fight with Netflix. Very, very interesting, fascinating, I would say, bidding war between the two. But the reality is, yes, it's been political. Obviously, when you have such high-profile companies, right, that affect industries from technology to entertainment to consumers, it's just it's just a battleground for everybody to weigh in and to share their views. And obviously, there is different obviously considerations, right? It could also imply that people of different views may potentially use this deal as a way to potentially influence in such an important industry. But obviously, all this is kind of a little bit of speculation at this point in time. And I think what we'll have to, do over the coming months is to continue to watch closely and continue to do great reporting, as Bloomberg has done over the past few months, reporting the facts and trying to see what the next steps will be in this regulatory path, which I'm sure will be fascinating as well.
Okay, Manuel, thank you so much for being with us. Manuel Baigori, who leads our deals team in Asia, so thinking about the Warner Brothers Discovery Paramount Skydance deal. Stay with us. More from Bloomberg Daybreak Europe coming up after this.
Now to the by-election result in the UK, with the Green Party winning the seat in Manchester's Gorton and Denton constituency, formerly held by Labour. Bloomberg opinion columnist Rosa Prince is with us now for more. Rosa, good morning. Now, governments don't tend to win by-elections, so what's the significance of this result?
Well, they don't tend to win, but actually this is a Labour Party elected on a landslide 19 months ago, and usually they do manage to win the first few. It was also a really terrible defeat from one of Labour's safest constituencies, over 50% of the vote, to come in a miserable third. And they'll really worry about who they lost to, because the Green parties are to their left, and it proves that the threat to them staying in power, not just in 3.5 years when the general election will be fought, but in May local elections that are coming up, is not just from the left, not just from the right, the Reform Party that we kind of knew about, but also now from the left. And one pollster this morning has said that Labour is entering the valley of death. They can't seem to hang on to voters anywhere.
Wow. So it will raise new questions then about Keir Starmer's leadership of the Labour Party. I mean, something that's been looking, more and more difficult and more doubtful for the past few weeks.
Well, that's right. He had a terrible start to the year, if you remember, a kind of almost a coup attempt. And in the last few weeks, I kind of got the sense that things had settled down, that they'd decided to stick with him at least till those May local elections. Now, any Labour MP waking up this morning will think, if we can't win in Gorton and Denton, classic Labour territory, then maybe my seat isn't safe. Maybe we should try with someone else. So I think Starmer is in big trouble personally today. And I also think his party's in trouble because they haven't really got a clear direction of how they can see off these populists on both the left and the right. And the one message we're hearing from the electors is that they've had it with the establishment and they want something new.
And one more question for you, Rosa, on what these smaller parties, which actually are not hugely well known in the UK, actually now represent. I mean, we've been watching the rise of Reform UK and the rise of the Greens, but the Green winner, Hannah Spencer, I just saw this line that I thought was interesting. Life has changed. Instead of working for a nice life, we're working to line the pockets of billionaires. Rosa, we've been talking about billionaires and trillionaires this morning and what it might mean for the world. I mean, the populism that we're seeing now in the UK is also really noteworthy and kind of new.
It is. So I was in Gorton and Denton last week and I had a nice chat with Hannah Spence. And she said to me that in the past, parties like her own, the Greens, they are not really talking about the climate. They are very much talking about this kind of stuff, about wealth taxes, about billionaires. She said that in the past, it had been seen as a wasted vote to vote Green. Now, what we've seen in Gorton and Denton is the idea of five-party politics that we've sort of been shown hints of in the opinion polls are confirmed in an election. We are now into five-party politics. The Green Party has broken through and is now quite substantial. And they've shown that they can win anywhere because, again, this was not a target seat for them. This was never somewhere that they had expected to do well. But they managed to really pull together a coalition of left-leaning graduates and students with a big Muslim community there. And it wasn't even close. The idea was that it would be a very tight contest, but they won pretty handsomely.
OK, Rosa Prince, Bloomberg opinion columnist, thank you very much. Now, as Russia's war economy strains under growing pressure from sanctions and slumping revenues, even businesses in regions that have benefited from massive increases in military spending are feeling the pain. Documents seen by Bloomberg show business leaders raising serious concern with officials over the situation. Tony Halpin, who leads our team covering Russia and Ukraine, joins us now for more. Tony, what do these documents show?
Good morning. Well, it's a survey carried out by a local industrialist association in the region of Nizhny Novgorod, which is historically has been one of Russia's most important centres for defence production, for example, and has a large automobile plant in the region. And it basically shows them all complaining essentially that orders are down, the costs of servicing debt is very high because now they have to pay commercial rates which are in excess of 20% because subsidised loan rates have just all disappeared. They're suffering because they're not getting paid on time, and big state corporations are among those that are most to blame, so they're having to eat into their reserves. And they're essentially forecasting that if things go on like that, something like 20,000 people in the region are going to lose their jobs in the next 6 months. And there's nothing untypical about Nizhny Novgorod. It's the kind of region that, if you're not reliant on oil or gas revenues, it is seen all over Russia. And I think it's indicative very much of the stresses now facing Russia's economy.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really interesting, the granular detail about this particular region, one of 80 or so in Russia. What do you think it tells us then about the state of Russia's war economy overall?
Well, there's no doubt. I mean, growth slowed sharply last year. It was down to something like 1% from something like 4.9% in the previous year. And this year, Russia's economy is struggling quite considerably. Officials already recognise that fact. We had a story the other day that basically says the economy ministry is planning to revise its GDP forecast because they understand that oil prices aren't coming back to a level that they need anytime soon. So there are real pressures now in the Russian economy. At the same time, they can't actually really cut back on spending because they've got to fund the war. So they're in a tough spot.
How is the Kremlin likely to respond to these concerns being raised?
Well, I think this is one of the paradoxes. Putin doesn't really view the strains and stresses on the Russian economy as something that should really influence his political decisions. He thinks it's largely a decision that the government has to deal with, and it's their responsibility to make the economy run so that he can carry on with his political and geopolitical strategy. But clearly, you can't act in a vacuum, and more officials are basically telling the Kremlin that things are very difficult, the economy is not functioning very well. Later and later in the year, it's going to get more and more difficult. So clearly, at some point, it is going to influence the Kremlin's strategy, even as currently the Kremlin isn't really acknowledging that it will have any effect.
This is Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, your morning brief on the stories making news from London to Wall Street and beyond.
Look for us on your podcast feed every morning on Apple, Spotify and anywhere else you get your podcasts.
You can also listen live each morning on London DAB Radio, the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Our flagship New York station is also available on your Amazon Alexa devices. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Stephen Carroll. Join us again tomorrow morning for all the news you need to start your day, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.